Hi, I'm Shari Blaukopf. I'm here in the south of France, and there's a really beautiful scene behind me. I love this water wheel with all the greenery on it and the beautiful French houses behind, and behind that a hill and a mountain and more greenery, and I'm going to paint it in ink and watercolor. I've put in a few pencil lines for placement on the page. That really helps me to position things, and now I'm putting in some of my ink. I don't like to draw everything in pencil because then I'll just be duplicating the lines, and it's much more fun to do those ink lines fresh on the white paper. I always like to add a few people in for scale. They give so much life to the scene. The town is in a valley, so I want to show the hillside behind the buildings, and I just love the sound of the running water that runs through this town. You can hear it everywhere, and it keeps me company as I'm painting. The bridge is a really important component of this drawing. First of all, it crosses the water and everybody walks across that bridge. But also the lines of the perspective lead the eye right to that water wheel, which is going to be my focus in this sketch. There's a fisherman checking out the fish in the water today. I'm going to quickly add him in. He's wearing overalls and he's got the hood of his hoodie on. I think he won't be here for long, so I'm trying to draw him quickly. There's so much going on around that water wheel. There's even a little vegetation that stands out as bright green, so I'm going to make sure I get that in. It's little spots of light against the dark of the water wheel. In these urban scenes, the details are important. The people, the signs, the windows, the shutters, they all tell a story about the place, so I make sure to always include some of them, including the guy who's sitting and looking at his phone and sitting on the stairs. Now that the ink is dry, I'm going to erase the pencil lines before I put any watercolor on here. I'm mixing up a warm wash for the building colors, and I'm adding a little yellow and a little red, and I'll start off quite light at the tops of the buildings and darken them as I come down. There's lots of light at the top, and then because the buildings are tall and the road is narrow, they do look a little darker at the bottom. I'm using a pointy brush for this. It's an Escoda brush that holds lots of water, so I can go back into my washes I also like to change color as I go from building to building, so I start with one wash and then just add a little more red or a little more yellow or a little blue, just to change the color slightly from building to building. There's an arch that leads to a garden, so I'm adding a little ultramarine and burnt sienna just to make that dark archway. It's a good frame for the man that's standing there. I'm using a more neutral color, a kind of medium gray on both sides of the sketch. That way I can focus the brightest colors in the center of attention, which is right in the middle around the water wheel. As I'm painting the bridge, I'm trying to remember to leave a little bit of light on those top surfaces to show where the brightest areas are on the bridge. I'm going to mix up some bright green. When I have it on my brush, I try to dot it all around the sketch. So it's in the vegetation. I'm also going to use it on the top of the hill that's above and behind the buildings. It's that same bright green mix that I change to a little bit darker as I paint the cypress tree that's up at the top of the buildings. My pointy brush is really good for getting in those spaces, and I'm going to make it a little darker as I come down towards the stairs between the two buildings. For my green mix, I use a little yellow, a little ultramarine, and some hooker's green. My deepest color will be on the water wheel itself, so I'm mixing up some ultramarine and some burnt sienna and using it quite thickly and adding a little bit of hooker's green in there to show that mossy growth on the water wheel. And I'm also leaving some light spaces at the tops. I'm going to add a little more blue, and of course as I come around and go under the bridge, that's also a really dark area, so I'm going to keep that dark on my brush and move it right into the water right under the bridge. The water from the source where this comes from is really green, and there's some bright green vegetation in there, and the water is really clear, so I'm going to use a brighter green on the water. Switching over to a smaller brush, and I'm going to start to add some details, little dark details under the roof lines and in the window. So this is a good small brush, quite pointy, holds a lot of wash, and allows me to put in a lot of those little details. I love all the terracotta, so burnt sienna is great for that. Lots of burnt sienna in this mix. Try to capture that big shadow that's on the side of the bridge and goes under those little spots and under the railings of the bridge and under all the details. Oops, it's dripping a little bit. I'll pick that up. With the dark on my brush, I'm going to add a few details in the trees, a little bit in the water, and a little bit up on the top. If you have a good pointy brush, it really allows you to do a lot of those smaller details. I rely on that pointy brush for a lot. And that's why I don't over ink it, because I want some of the details to be made using the colors on my brush. I can always add more ink lines later. windows reflect what's around them, and there's so much greenery around here that when I look up at those windows, they seem really green to me. I love a little bit of burnt sienna, diluted burnt sienna on the people. And I left white for a reason on the water wheel. Those water wheels are so covered in moss, and I wanted to have a space to add bright green onto the water wheel. My fisherman is surrounded by middle value, and I really want him to stand out, so I'm going to make those coveralls dark so he stands out on that little landing. And I always use my brightest colors on the little details, turquoises and reds, and that's what I use on the people and on the signage to try and give a little focus on the urban details. And I think I'll just darken that archway a little bit with my darkest color. The last few details I add in with my white gel pen, like the water that's falling off the water wheel, and a few little details on shrubs, on people, on signage. Adding a little white always gives it a little sparkle, especially in the darkest areas. That's what I try to find, the real darks, and I put white on there. My very last step is to go back with my ink pen when everything's dry and just sharpen up a few of the details and add a few darker lines where I think emphasis is needed. I'd rather do this right at the very end rather than over ink it at the beginning. Here's my final water wheel in ink and watercolor. And if you enjoyed that, have a look at my French village scene. I'll post a link for that course in the comments. Thanks for watching. See you next time.